Hey everyone, Ekman here with another video, and this is a guide that I've been wanting to make for a long time. It is for the black and yellow Luffy leader that we got from Star Deck 13. He's one of the best decks in this format, but he's not super straightforward on how he works behind the scenes and like how the value works and everything. And I've had a lot of people ask me, how do you play this deck? What's the best way to do so? And I finally had enough time and experience to make this guide too. And also, if you are not interested in playing this deck, but you want to know how to play against it too, I think this is also indirectly a really good guide for that, because you kind of see what they value and what they try to do, and if you can prevent them from doing so, I think that's very, very strong for being able to play against it too. So, but in general, for this video, we're going to go over a card pool, kind of the staple cards, the tech options, and also an example list that I've been playing personally. We're also going to go over some standard combos, so these are just generic combos you want to do for this deck in general, and then kind of a feature at the end. It's going to go over some gameplay footage that I've done on my live streams, which you guys can check out, linked in the description as well if you want to see. I did like a whole 5-hour stream going over and testing this leader this week, but kind of like the turning point, or like when you go down to zero. I call it awakening because it's a Dragon Ball term, but it's essentially how do you get to zero life to start looping your leader effect, and what's the best time and when you get the most value for it. I think it's really kind of the most complex part of this deck, is when and how do we get to zero life and become a 9k leader and get the maximum amount of value that we can with it. So that's the kind of idea for this video. We're going to have timestamps at the bottom too, and let's go over the card pool first. All right, to start off, we're going to go over the staple cards for this deck. You don't have to run exactly at least all these 38s, but you probably should run at least a copy or two of each of these, and most of these you do have to kind of run at 4, but these are the 38 that I've said like you have to run, which is kind of nice but also a little bit intimidating when playing this deck. It just means that you have to be really specific and precise with your tech options, because you don't have a lot of room for them, and depending on who you ask, there's maybe even more staple cards that you have to run in these lists. But to kind of run them down, Garp is just our best searcher. It's a really good turn 1 play to be able to find our pieces. We have Flampe and as well as Hiyori. Both of these let us take cards from our life, get us down to 0, and also Hiyori gets you to set up some stuff. We're running our 2-drop boys and the 5-cost variants as well, which you have to run for this deck. I think Ace is like the weakest one, and I've played some builds without running Ace, and I didn't mind it. I do think like a 2-2 split's probably where most people line up with it, but it's not a card that it's just the weakest compared to the other two, because we have Luffy. Both 5 costs are really strong. I have 3 and 3. Some people put 4 of Luffy, Rocket Luffy, and 4 of the 3 of the other one, and vice versa, or 4 of both. But I think you have to run at least 3 of each of these, if not more of them. This one's like our best turn 3 play, being able to take a card, like just draw a card from your life. If your opponent can't answer it, you can do it again, and being able to do it on your next turn without having used any Dawn investments are actually really strong in a lot of ways. This is the newest card for this deck, and it's so dang good. It's just a Luffy, but being able to use a card that lets us not only get rid of something on our opponent's board, but also draw a card is super impactful for this deck. So I really do appreciate this. There's so many times where you just use your Gecko Moria, you combo through, and then you just play this to draw a card. You don't lose any value, which is really strong for the deck too. And then we do have the Sabo. You have to run 4 of this. It's the main, backbone of this deck, along with the Moria, because you need to use this. Like, this is where you get the value from this deck, being able to play Moria to be able to get two drops from the trash, and then be able to go into 2 more of your 5-drop bodies and become a 9k leader. Oh, that's very, very strong. So these are the staple cards. So again, not a lot of wiggle room, but there are some tech options for this deck too. So going through this, these are pretty much all the ones I've tested, and some I've actually tested a little bit more, but we'll kind of go through them real quickly. We do have Makino, so if you want more 2k counters that are able to help you get down to 0 life, I think Makino is the next one. It's kind of rough. Sometimes you just don't get any value from it, but it's okay since you only spent 1 Dawn for it. We also do kind of have in the same vein Emporia, which is a blocker that also lets you set up a 5-drop into your life. So really good with like a Makino-like effect that's also a blocker. So if you do this and you use Sabo, you get 2 blockers that can't be KO'd, which is pretty good. And then also we have the copy of Thunderbolt. I actually really like this card. Out of life, it does a lot. And then also being able to get some really good removal at times, I think it's really impactful. So you do have to have a card into your life, but you can do that pretty easily with this deck. because if you're at 0, you just use your leader effect to put 2 back in. So I think this is really good for being able to help you in those situations. So I think that's great, and it helps the deck a lot in that way. So I like Thunderbolt. We also do have some ways for like some additional cost reduction. So I think there's also like Suru being another 2k that you can just kind of splash in. One-legged soldier, the same kind of idea. For 2 costs, you get rid of a 3. Or you give -3 reduction. We have Perona as well, another 2k. This is one of my favorites because sometimes you just play this on board and it does make your opponent discard a card, which is depending on the matchup kind of crucial. And then we also have Kuzan, which gets us a card draw immediately, and then also the reduction when we attack. I don't generally like this card because it can be stuck in hand, but we can cycle so much in this deck with Sabo, so that's very nice. And we also have like Shirahoshi, just a blocker that has an on play of -4. Laboon, which lets you -4 activate main, which is helpful, and Ice Age as well. So I think all these are really good like potential cards to get some cost reduction. And we also just have some alternative big bodies, such as like the Isho. This kind of does it all. Being able to make your opponent discard 2 cards is strong. Being able to put a Dawn underneath it to give something -3 cost, so your Rocket Luffy can hit a 7 or less, is really strong. And it's a 9k body, so it does do some work. And I've been seeing some people put in Kuzans, which is a little bit greedy at times, because I do feel, based on my own experience, if you play this, you have to be really careful that you don't just lose on the next turn. But being able to use this to KO a 5 or less, and then also give everything 5- is really strong too. So your Rocket Luffy essentially gets rid of everything that's not a 9-drop. So I think that's good for the deck as well. And then just some additional like event cards. We have Three Brothers Bond, which some people may say that this is a staple, and I don't disagree necessarily, but I've been seeing less and less copies being added to the deck. I don't super love it as much. Sometimes it's just kind of stuck in hand, or like the fact that it only helps you find a piece, and if you still miss it, you feel really bad with it. So I don't think you need the consistency as long as you find your Sabos. And then also the 200 million volts. This I think is less popular as it was, but being able to get rid of like a Rebecca block or an attack for game, or get like 1k stronger than your opponent thought you were going to be, is something that can also happen too. So in general, there are just like a good amount of cards, but it kind of boils down to having like your additional 2k helping you get some cost reduction if you want to, if you want some more blockers, if you want some additional ways to remove things, or just some additional value. That's kind of what the flex spot is for a lot of it. And so the other thing too, that you'll see a lot of these cards are either 4 costed or 2 costed, and that just means that if you have to do like a really early Gecko Moria when your life is either too high, or you don't really have your card set up in trash, there are some really alternative options for it. So like Kuzan or Perona being that as well. So we also do, I didn't really mention it, but we got Viola and Borsalino's blockers. This card is actually, you can use it to set your life face down, so you can draw it again after your leader effects puts it there. So it's kind of silly at times, but being able to say, all right, I use the effect, I use Viola to put everything face down, and then play a Sabo blocker to give it, protection, just means you have 2 blockers that are indestructible, and then you also draw the cards back. So not like the worst thing. I've tried some Viola before and not terrible, but this is my current list right now. I think it's still pretty standard, pretty safe for what it does, but the key choices that I chose for this one in particular is making sure that Kuzan here helps you get that additional card draw, and then you can also play like a really good game of like Protect Kuzan, where you're able to like play this, and then you're able to play Sabo, and the next turn you can attack with Kuzan and then Luffy and get rid of something, which is really good. And then we also have like the Ice Age, we have the Three Brothers Bond, and also the Thunderbolt, which I think all these are really, really good cards for the deck. So I think that's great. I think that helps the deck a lot. And this build's, again, it's nothing too fancy. There's no real big tech card for it, but for what it does, I think it has some good options. So the only card I'm not sold on, sometimes I want Suru instead of Perona, but I think Perona in itself is probably good enough for like cost reduction when we need to. So this is the build for this one, and let's go over to some example combos for this deck. All right, there are a lot of combos for this deck, and they kind of boil down to 2 of them. One of them is, what do we do? Like, what's our best combo to be able to get to 0 life and use our leader effect and get it like a 7 or 9k? And then the other one is kind of, what do we do with Tendon? What's our best play with it a lot of the time? So for trying to get to, one of the best things I think is that if you sequence it correctly, you can make a leader that is like a 7k with 1 life, or even a 9k with 1 life, and then being able to after that chain it so you do 2 at a time, if that makes sense. So for example, for this one, if we want to, let's say we're at 1 life with this one, we can use Hiyori for 2 to put a Luffy or one of the 5 drops into our life at the top position. Then we're able to use the 2-drop Luffy here to bounce it back out, which means that we'll go down to 0 life and become a 7k leader. We then put 2 Dawn underneath our leader to trash a card to put 2 cards into our life, and then we're able to play the Sabo to get rid of the, or get into the other one, and then go from there. So we end the board as a 9k leader. We have 1 Sabo face up into our life, and then we also have a Sabo blocker and a 5-drop Luffy. Both of them can't be KO'd by effects. So I think that's honestly really good for this deck, being able to be at 1. I think being able to be at that safety 1 life means that you can do some really greedy pushes and stuff. And I'll mention again later that you don't always need to be a 9k leader. You kind of have to be cognizant, because sometimes, like, yeah, you can be a 7k leader because your opponent's best play next turn is to just play an 8-drop Moria on curve, right? And if they do that, then they don't pressure your 7k leader or a 9k leader at all, and that kind of changes up what you get for your pressure. So I think that's something that is insightful. But a lot of the time, if you're able to keep 1 life kind of in tandem and rotate every turn to add, balance it out, use the effect, and then put 2 more in there, being a 9k leader with 1 life is very, very strong for this leader. And it's something that I don't think a lot of people try to strive for. I think they just try to go for 9k with 0 life because it's a little bit easier. But I think that's something that really impacts a lot of matchups. So there's that. And then there's also the 10 Dawn combo. So this is generically what you want to do when you're at 10 Dawn. A lot of you guys probably know this, but I'm going to go mention it anyways. So for 10, you can play Gecko Moria. For 8, you be able to play 2 of your 2 cost. You can use the remaining 2 Dawn to put them underneath your Luffy. You discard a card from there, and then from that, you put 2 cards into your life. If you put Sabo in there, you want it to be the bottom card, so it protects the other thing you play out. And then we use the Luffy 2-drop to play the 5-drop Luffy, and the Sabo 2-drop to play the 5-drop Sabo. It protects everything you played this turn and the previous turns. And then lastly, if you want to, you can use the Luffy to pop a card. And you can even just do that even if there's nothing to pop. Sometimes it's good to just draw a card so you don't really lose card advantage. Sometimes you want to just wait, keep it around, attack with it next turn, then pop it, because you will find out if you're able to chain your Morias. 5 characters on board gets pretty filled pretty quickly when you're playing 3 every turn, and they're likely not getting KO'd either. So I think that's really impactful. That's kind of like the main combo for this deck. And so you don't always want to go for it. Sometimes there's better value plays, but if you can strive for it, it's the best play 9 times out of 10. So that is the kind of idea for this deck. It's also why you always want to go second with this deck, because you have a lot of even plays, and you want to be able to use the 10-drop version of this play a lot of the time. The other thing I also want to mention is sometimes I see people where they aren't able to they're at like 1 life or something, and they're like, oh, I have to use the 1-drop. Sometimes you can just play Moria, use it to play like a Flampe or a Hiyori from your trash, and then one of the 2-drop boys. The best card is Hiyori, because you can play Hiyori, put one of the 5 costs into your hand, and then you become a 7k leader. You won't be able to put 2 cards back into your life during that turn, but being able to get a Moria and a Sabo to protect the Moria on that same curve helps you so immensely. And a 7k leader with a 5/6 blocker on curve, likely your opponent won't be able to pressure you that much anyway, so I wouldn't be really afraid for it. So and that kind of just leans into some miscellaneous points before we get to the gameplay. Sometimes a 7k leader with 1 life is better than a 9k leader with 0 life. You kind of have to read what your opponent can do next turn, and especially it gets tricky with green and blue, because both those decks can really easily interact with your Sabo. And this also kind of comes up with red-purple law as well, where sometimes you just need to force them to have X amount of attacks instead of one really, really tall one, if that makes sense. So generally it is better to be 9k with 0 life, but you do have to be like, you know what? I don't think my opponent can attack more than 1 time next turn anyways. Let's make it more difficult for them and not give it to them by getting that extra life to our hand. So do mention that, and I do want to say like it's a thin line. It's a thin line of when it's more advantageous, but be on the lookout for it. So there's that. 2, Sabo can attack. I know it's a 5/6 blocker. I know you really like blocking with it, but sometimes you just want to attack with it, especially like if you're going to lose it after playing an 8-drop Moria. Sometimes you can just block with it willy-nilly because you're going to lose the spot for it next turn too. Sabo, how you play your Sabos and what you do with them are probably the key point for this deck too. So don't be afraid to attack with them, because if you attack with them, it's the same as them blocking a larger attack at times. So make sure you know when that value makes sense. And the other thing too is that you want to make it so your opponent's always attacking into a larger body. So if you're a 9k body, just don't attack with the Sabo sometimes too, because then they can just pressure the 6k Sabo down. So it's a lot of hot and cold, but just recognize that Sabo can attack for sure. The another one is don't race down to 0 life. I see some people just willy-nilly just go down as fast as possible, and then they get hurt because they just run out of value late game, or they just kind of run out of gas. So you gotta kind of, again, hot and cold, make sure you know like when you can take cards or not, because if you're at 0 life, your opponent's just gonna start punching you every turn, right, without much remorse. And you have to make sure that they kind of, again, they have to want to hit you, but not be able to hit you hard enough that you're in danger, but enough to get you down to like your 0 life condition. So again, and this kind of leads into the last point before we go to the videos. Play this deck. Just play the deck. I have like verifiable footage of me like the first couple hours playing it, just being awful with this deck, or just not putting cards in the sequence correctly, or not figuring out. And if it's tricky and it's not your gameplay style, it's okay to not like the deck. But I do think that you do get rewarded, and it's not just something that people pick up, right? This is a specific way to play this, get a lot of value. And honestly, the best teacher is to find a lot of these different scenarios that you find yourself in, and finding out what was the best play in that scenario and do that moving forward. So it's okay that you lose, because your losses for this deck, I think, will transfer into wins. And just don't be afraid about losing. Just make sure you learn from your losses, and this deck will really reward you for doing so. So that's kind of all we want for the points. And let's go to some example awakening or turning point clips. All right, we've got some turning point clips, and there's me. This is my live stream, but here I am right now, so don't even worry about that goober behind me. But we've got a couple games, and if you guys want to see all of these games, so you can check out the live stream linked in the description and check it out there. But we've got one versus Anel, and I think Anel specifically, we can kind of awaken or go down to 0 life as quickly as possible, because we do one, they can't really pressure us as easy as other decks, and then the other thing too is that they kind of get some advantage from us being at higher life totals, so we're kind of okay with it. But we're just going to be pressuring them down. They're also kind of a weird deck when it comes to their life totals, but we're going to play this for 5, discard 2, and then go to just pass from there. Again, Sabo being immune is really great. They can't hit it with like Raigo or anything. And the fact that they have to play a Shirahoshi here just means that their hand is just pretty rough, which is nice to see. They can go 6 into 5. We're just going to take it, which they could have probably not hit us, and we would have been a little upset. But we're going to go from there. We're going to be at 2 life. And 7 Dawn, and we could go down to 0 right now. You could see the pieces for it, but I'm like, you know what, we can kind of wait one more turn. We can play another Sabo out here. Also, this is a weirder Dressrosa list. Don't worry about it. Again, we have the 38 main pieces, so just look at those pieces for the deck. So we're gonna play another Sabo there. We're gonna go 7k into them, and we can hit them down to 1 pretty calmly, just because we know that they're only going to 7 Dawn next turn, or 8 Dawn. So unless they have a Katakuri, which they do, but they used it on the Shirahoshi for some reason. All right, pause. All right, so we're at 9. We're at 9 Dawn right here. And I want to mention this right here, because I do want to say, all right, so you've kind of seen what this game looks like. We've seen where we're at right now, and in a minute we're going to see the cards in hand when the overlay disappears. But what I want you guys to think is like, what is our best play from this point right here? You see, we've got a Hiyori in hand, we got a Moria, and we also have just a bunch of cards, right? Because I think there is kind of a definitive answer for this one, being at 2 life. So if you have an idea, go for it. If not, pause. Otherwise, here's what I did, and here's what I want to do at 9 Dawn. So we could play Moria, right? But we don't really have the setup for it either. And so we're going to do is we're going to play this Hiyori for 2. We're going to use his effect to take the top card, which is another Moria, which is great. We're going to put the 5-cost Luffy there. We're going to use the 2-cost Luffy to bring it out, which means we get to be a 7k leader. We're going to be able to use the Luffy effect to go down to 0 cards in life, so we can use the leader effect once again. And then we're going to discard 2. And I don't think I have a Sabo because we could attack with Sabo and then replace it. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to attack with 6k there. And we do have the 5/6 Sabo in there. But I think the biggest thing you'll also notice is that you want to try to proc as many Sabo on plays as you can, because drawing to, like, you just get so much filter through your deck. And in a combo deck, that's really important. So we're going to... Yeah, we're just looking. We do have a Sabo in there already too, so maybe I just missed that card. But we could have replaced the Sabo as well. But we're gonna go. Yeah, we're gonna think really hard here. But we are going to eventually use the leader effects. We're gonna trash the Luffy. We're gonna put Luffy at the bottom. We're gonna put Sabo on top. Get the replacement there, and then draw 2, trash 2. So that's kind of the idea. We also have some Moria set up. We also have a good amount of counter in hand. We could use Garp if we wanted to get some more synergy and searches, but we've pretty much found every card we want. We hit them down to 11 because they're probably not going to get out of it, and then we can pressure them to 7 because if they do take this, we put them down to 0 life. So that's just the first one there. We're going to switch to another one, but hopefully that just means that you guys can see like how and when you want to get down to 0 life efficiently, and that like you get your value from your Sabos a lot of the time too. So we're going to see some more Sabo value in this one too. We're playing against a Rob Lucci, and they're going to start going first. We're going to go second in this one. We have the Flampe. We're going to use it. We also have now 3 Hioris in hand, which is quite nice. And we're going to see if they try to pressure us at all. And Rob Lucci is kind of like in a weird spot where they kind of have to attack into us if they want to start putting cards from the top of their deck into their trash. Also for removal purposes too. So they're going a 5k into us. We're just going to take it immediately. And then we're going to go 5 into them. And something else too is that even though we're like our combo deck, we want to just make sure to try and we have to push their face pretty often. We can really ignore a lot of their 5k, 6k bodies because they generally don't get enough Dawn to be able to attack our face anyways. So we can just kind of put the pressure onto them and say, you know what, if I have Rush Ace right now, I could win. So we play out of the Kuzan, which I think is very strong in this deck, and especially in this matchup, because if they don't get rid of it right now, we're able to use our Sabos to be able to protect it. And then Lucci, unless they're playing like specifically a copy of a Brook, which they have been a little bit more often, get rid of it. So it looks like they're likely not going to be able to get rid of it. It'd have to be like a Suru and 4-drop. So, and even if they did that, that'd probably just be a lot of value for us. So they do get their Lucci, but they don't have the removal for it, so they're just going to leave it there. So that's actually great for us. That's really good. So we're going to be able to play the Sabo and protect it pretty easily. And that just means our Kuzan can get some big removal next turn too, or in any of our future turns. So, because right now we could get rid of the Rob Lucci, and I think that's the decision I'm trying to make here. But I think that the Kuzan will get us more value later into the game than just getting rid of a 4/6 body on their board. So we're just going to go 5 there. They're going to decide if they want to take it or not. And then we're going to be able to play our Sabo. I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit. They take it. All right, so we play Sabo, we draw 2, trash 2, and then we just get rid of our things. And I could play the 1-drop if I wanted to, but I decided not to. Just keep it in hand. I'd rather just have it in counter. And the biggest reason, actually, I remember now, the biggest reason I didn't play Garp is that we haven't found any copies of Gecko Moria, and I had a good feeling that if we did play the Garp, we're going to bottom deck a Gecko Moria. So I was kind of just hoping that we eventually did find it, and we have another Sabo cycle next turn, so I'm not really afraid of it. So right now they are at 7 Dawn. They played the Khalifa, which felt good for us. We're going to play this. We're going to draw 2, trash 2. And we get the Thunderbolt, which is a little bit tempting. We're going to get rid of the Garp and the 2-drop Ace just to put it into the trash. Because we do want... There's also just a balance of like when do we put 2 drops in our trash or not. All right, we're going to go 6. And I think we're going to go 2 6s here because I'd rather them get rid of 2Ks instead of get rid of their 1Ks, just because I know that they've been searching them anyways. And just kind of puts them like some weird number spots here too. Especially because they've been trying to keep like a high life total. All right, so we got rid of 2 2Ks from hand, which is nice. We used Thunderbolt. We get rid of a Moria, which stunk pretty bad. And we're going to pass it back to them. But having Sabo out being at 1 life and them being at this board, they're going to want to try to play Moria. But if they do, they just won't be pressuring my leader, which is really nice. And we can do something funny like Hiyori into Luffy, into getting rid of something. Like we're set up really, really well. The only thing we're missing is 8-drop Moria, which hopefully we see sooner than later. All right, so they're going to play their 8-drop. They're going to play their Rebecca and another copy of a Spandine there. They whiff off the Spandam. They get a Kaku to hand. And they can play the Spandine if they want to, but we're pretty ahead here. So they're going to pass the turn. They're going to actually look like they attack 6 into this. I'm thinking about if I want to keep it or not. Like pretty desperately. And I think the answer is we're going to get rid of the Luffy, I think. Yeah, because we want to set up our next turn. All right, pause time. All right. This scenario again, this is the board that we're in. Spoilers, I'm attacking with Kuzan super early, but I don't think that's too wild here. So at 1 life, you have to kind of determine what is the best way for us to get down to 0 and get the awakening for it. You kind of know what the cards are in Trashin. We have Hiyori, we have our 2-drop Luffy's on hand, and a 1-drop Flampe. We don't have any Luffy's or Sabos in our hand though, so we can't really Hiyori, but kind of guess what you think would be the best play. You can pause it right now if you want to, but we're going to continue. We're going to attack with our Kuzan here. We're going to go 5 into that. We're going to get the reduction on the Moria, making it a 4 cost, which is quite nice for removal here. They're going to think we're going to hover over this Flampe because we know we're going to play it this next turn. And they're doing the big think. The big think. The really big thing. All right, we're gonna skip a couple. All right, we're gonna there we go. All right, so then after that we're gonna go 7K with our Sabo because we know that we can get rid of it. And the other thing too is that since we don't have Moria in hand yet, we really just want to draw 2 trash 2 just to get closer to it because Moria will be checkmate next turn. I think in a lot of ways. So they're gonna go down to 7. We're going to use Flampe. Going to draw 2, 1 from life, 1 from the top of our deck. Use our Luffy effect, discard a Kuzan from our hand, eventually. First, yeah. First, we're going to put the 5-drop Sabo in there. All right, see, we almost goofed ourselves, all right? But we did that there just to put it into our trash. Now we have ways to get both, which is nice. We're going to use our Luffy effect. We're going to use the effect to get rid of the Moria, which is fantastic. We have Sabo. We're going to use this to draw 2. And there's our Moria finally, which is really nice. And then with the situation we're at, I'm not really afraid of losing. So we're going to attack with our Sabo here. They're going to block, and then we're going to go big 11 into that. And so we pretty much won the game. They conceded pretty quickly after that one. So that's kind of the clips I wanted to show you guys. Again, if you want to see the entire gameplay for all these with me, with my live thoughts, you can check them out. In the description, I have it on my Twitch and YouTube for subscribers and members respectively. And that's kind of the end of this guide. So hopefully you learned something from it. Hopefully it wasn't just me rambling for a while. And it just kind of shows like how intricate this deck can be at times. And it's one of the reasons I just like it. There's just combos you never really feel confident if the play you made was the 100% best one at times. And kind of that strive for perfection for this deck is really fun. So anyways, I hope you guys learned it again. If you have any more questions, make sure to leave them in the comments. Hit that like and subscribe, and I'll catch you all next time.
Damn it.